I'm Jen from That Mama Book Nook, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I'm planning to read in June. I have a really interesting TBR system. I'm going to explain the system in a different video, but I am going to share the books that I'll be reading from those, and I'll give a little hint as to how I pick the books. My friends and I call it my June delusional stack instead of my June hopeful stack like many other people call it, because I pick more books than I can actually read in a month, or at least I have not been able to read this many previously, and because I'm a TBR reader, I roll them over from the previous month, so I still have a lot of May books that I'm getting to. These are new books that I'm putting on for June. So you might see in future videos books that were not on my June TBR, but that's because they were from May. So since I'm just starting this channel, I'm just gonna move forward from there. The first book that I am going to talk about is I am reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book has probably been on my TBR, one of the longest books on my TBR. I am reading it as part of a local book club, so I'm really excited that this was the book chosen. It is kind of obvious from the title what it's about. It follows the story of Evelyn Hugo, and it does mention her 7 husbands within the story, but I think it's also a lot about her life and her life story and the drama that kind of ensues. The next book that I'm reading is The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. This was my book of the month pick for May. It was recently published. I've been hearing a lot of good things about it though. I believe it's a kind of marriage of convenience during college to get some affordable housing, and then they thought they got divorced but they actually didn't, and then it turns out for the male main character to inherit a whole bunch of money, he needs to be married, but turns out he already is, so they haven't really had a relationship for many years, so a little bit of romance, but also kind of an interesting situation. Then the next book is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This is the first in a duology. I've also heard a lot of good things about this one. This one's been around for a little bit longer. It's described as a Hunger Games vampire style, which is awesome. I love a book with trials and competitions in it, so even though I'm sort of just entering into reading more fantasy, I think this one will be a really fun one to get into. I am also reading Serpentine Valentine. No reason why I have 2 serpent books on my TBR, but I do. This one I'm reading with the Swoony Readers, and I will link those accounts down below. This is a sapphic dark romance, so perfect for Pride Month, and should be really fun read. Then with the Thrills and Chills, which is some of the same accounts from the Swoony Readers, they are reading The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This book is about 4 friends that go to summer camp together, and 3 of the friends go missing, and the one friend that's left, she grows up but she finds herself back at camp many years later and tries to find out what happened to her friends. Just looking at the synopsis, it finally dawned on me that it was perfect, because the Thrills and Chills is hosting a readathon in June called Camp Nightmare, and it's very, as you can tell from the title, very camp themed. It's super well organized, super cute. I'm really having fun with it. There's bingo and scavenger hunts and all sorts of camp themed activities, so this book is absolutely perfect for that. Then I am also reading You Know What You Did by K.T. Wen. This is with the Literally Dying book club, hosted by Books and Lala, and she also has a YouTube, which I will link, and she also hosts the Buzzword, which that is really popular, so I will talk about that book in a second. But You Know What You Did is kind of about this woman who seems to have the perfect life, even though she grew up with a kind of troubled childhood, and her mom dies. And then everything starts to unravel and really crazy stuff starts happening, including dead bodies and all sorts of things. So trying to get to the bottom of what happened. Then, as I mentioned, Books and Lala also hosts the Buzzword. So if you're not familiar with that, each month there is a different buzzword or theme, and you try to pick a book that fits that. For June, that is a book with repeating words in the title. So I will be reading Tomorrow and Tomorrow, Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a pretty popular book that's been around. It is about video game design, but I've heard it's so much more than that, because people who aren't into video games still really enjoy this book, and it's, about life and love and all sorts of things. So that's what I'll be reading for that challenge. Then I will also be reading When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is another romantic fantasy. I am excited to get into this one, but a little bit nervous. This one seems more for people who are really well into the fantasy world. I could be wrong, but it's a chunky book, and I've heard that the world building is excellent, but it's created a whole new world here. So I am excited to try my hand in it, but I am interested to see how it goes. I am reading this with the Stay-at-Home Mom Book Queen book club. She has a bookstagram, and she also has a podcast, but she hosts a book club on her Discord. So I will be reading that with them. So at least I'll be able to chat and hopefully get any questions I have clarified if needed. Then I'm going to be buddy reading A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This cover is gorgeous. It is yet another romantic fantasy. I actually don't usually read this much fantasy in a month, so June is going to be a very fantasy heavy month, but again, kind of excited to read some different things. I mentioned in my previous video that I will pretty much read anything, so lots of diversity here. This book is about, I believe, a kind of childhood enemies to lovers story who kind of come together to help figure out what happened to some missing girls, and there's, spirits and magical elements involved, and music is one way to help with that. So that's probably a really bad description, but I will hopefully be able to give a better one after I read the book. I should briefly mention that I sometimes struggle with fantasy books reading the blurbs. I don't know if this happens to anyone else, but when I read the blurbs of fantasy books, it takes me multiple times to read it to figure out what the book is about, and sometimes it doesn't always interest me or catch my eye just reading the blurb, and sometimes it takes me a long time for it to pick up a fantasy book. But then when I do, I really enjoy it, so I'm trying to get past it, or definitely if there's a buddy read or a book club that's reading one, I gravitate towards those to kind of have an excuse to pick it up, not just put it on my TBR without any reason. Then the other buddy read that I am doing for this month is Leather and Lark by Brynn Weaver. This is the second book in the series. Butcher and Blackbird is the first, which is getting a lot of hype right now. I really enjoyed Butcher and Blackbird. It was very different. I wasn't sure if dark romance was going to be for me, but this is way more like dark rom-com, which is so fun. I was really intrigued about Lachlan in the first book, so I'm excited to get to his story, and I really enjoy reading the first one with friends, so I'm excited to do this one too. Then I actually read books on Goodreads Best Books Ever list, so I'm working my way through that, and the next book that I will be picking up this month is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I do not speak French, so hopefully I did not butcher that too much. This is obviously a really well-known book. I did technically read this one back in, I probably read it as a child, but then I also did read it in high school, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, about kind of a boy exploring different planets, but there's like a really great message behind it as well. So I will be reading that one. Then I always read a book from my physical shelf. I go in page length order from longest book to shortest book. This is my next book up, Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly. This is a World War II historical fiction based on a true story though, which I really enjoy. I think it's just so cool to learn little tidbits about people's lives who did really extraordinary things. So this follows 3 stories of 3 women from the cover who all had different roles in World War II and how their lives intersected and how they made a difference. I am a BookSparks Summer Reading Challenge ambassador this year, which I am really excited for. I have read one of the books so far. I'm reading the second one now and should be finishing that up this week, which I'll talk about. But the next 2 books I will be reading in June. The first one is Pardon My Frenchie by Farah Roshan. This book looks so cute. It is about a woman who owns a dog boarding hotel, and it's been really successful, and she has her sights set on a new building, but it gets sold to kind of the grumpy grandson of one of her favorite clients. And this grandson, his grandmother just got moved to assisted living, and so he's also has to take her dog, and he's really not a dog person, but he ends up working together with the owner, and it's a romance, so we know it happened, but also I guess the dogs have their own little romance, so it's really, really cute, and I love the cover. And then the next one is In This Ravishing World by Nina Schuyler. This is actually a collection of 9 short stories that deal with climate change, so I'm really interested to read that one. And then the last 2 books on my TBR are 2 advanced reader copies. I am going to be reading The Backtrack by Erin LaRosa. This is an interesting story about a woman whose grandmother is selling their family home, and she goes back to help clean it out, and she finds an old CD player, and she plays the CD of from one of her friends, and instead of just listening to the CD and having flashbacks of memories of the time, her memories are what could have happened. So, a little bit of a magical realism element to that. So I'm really looking forward to that one. It sounds awesome. And then the last one is Fated by Sarah Reddy. This is technically the 3rd book in the Ghosted series. This one is about a woman who is falling in love with a man literally in her dreams. So, to be determined if he's also real. I hope so for her. And that's it. That is my June TBR list. Let me know if you are reading any of these books also, or feel free to share books that you're going to be reading in June that you are excited about. And if you're not feeling super chatty, leave me a book stack emoji, because we're reading all the books this month. And that's it. I will talk to you again soon. Bye!